Okay, I'll admit and be fully honest, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic with the title, but I do absolutely think there is some semblance of truth to it. As of the recording of this video, Arc Raiders has 290,000 concurrent players, whereas the finals has just over 11,000. A pretty stark difference, one that can seem odd since the finals was generally well received. So why is there such a big difference? Well, first I'll start with the finals and why its player base has progressively dwindled over time. It can't all be diluted down into one explanation, but a significant contributing factor is the skill floor. Note how this is different to a skill ceiling. A skill ceiling refers to how good a player can be at any given game, yet a skill floor is considered to be the minimum skill you need to be in order to properly play the game. So a game like Rocket League has a low floor, meaning the majority of players will have fun at any skill level, but at the same time it has a very high skill ceiling, with the gap between the best and the worst players being exponential. If you've played the finals, you'll know it's a very fast-paced, team-based game that requires a lot of skill and thinking on your feet, especially since you often have very little time to react to scenarios not typically presented in other shooters. So in something like Call of Duty, a guy might just be standing behind a corner waiting for you to walk past, whilst in the finals, someone may collapse the floor underneath you, with another enemy grappling across the map, heading straight through the window right by you, whilst holding a large, highly poisonous gas canister. Just an example. So the finals can throw a lot at you, and especially because team sizes are small, just one player who is falling behind will let a whole team down. The finals also has multiple weapons that can be fun to use but are difficult to grasp, and it could lead to some players being frustrated over a quote-unquote lack of weapon variety as well, since they can't use half of them. With me personally, I find the situation a little sad and disheartening. I absolutely loved the finals when it released, and I was by no means a pro. But I did well most games, and I've had some of the most fun and exciting moments in this than any other shooter. With that being said though, I rarely find myself going back to it as, almost every other game I feel outmatched and the player bases simply just exceeded the skill level I'm currently at. It's still an amazing game though, and I highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't actually tried it yet. A lot of effort was poured into it, and the level of detail from Embark isn't lost on me. It also kind of reminds me of Hyperscape, if anyone remembers that. It was my favourite battle royale to date, and it was unfortunately shut down not too long after release. Something I also contribute to a high skill floor. It discouraged many people from playing, and although I had great fun and many others did, it just seemed too difficult for a lot of people, and admittedly that was the case. Even though I played a bunch, it was still that way, and yeah, unfortunately no longer. Anyways, what about Arc Raiders itself? Well, it's quite a different story. Since release, it's kept an extremely consistent player count, and it's only gone down very slightly as of the week of recording, but the numbers still make it stick in the top 5 played games across all of Steam, and it doesn't really look like it'll drop off anytime soon. If you're a keen-eyed viewer, you might ask, well, why is it doing so well? It's not like Arc Raiders is the easiest or most forgiving game ever, it's literally an extraction shooter, but to that I'd say, well, you actually kind of have a point. But I think a surprisingly large reason for things going well is the community. Okay, when I say that, most of the community. Stop looking at the subreddit, it'll do you no good, okay? Back to what I was saying though, the community is surprisingly non-hostile, and the sense of togetherness is often interwoven in most games. Me personally, I can go into 8 or 9 games in a row and not get killed by a single person, even though I've encountered many along the way. And to make the obvious point, part of this being the case is the arcs themselves and their level of lethality. Even if you're fully kitted out and a skilled player, it can be quite easy to get caught out by one of the many arc enemies, and your run will just simply end there. So many times there's a PvP encounter, it'll often disadvantage the initiating player, as PvE enemies will make their way over to you during a fight, and they'll do it while you're looting and vulnerable. This has made a lot of players, me included, only shoot when shot at, and we instead opt to emote and speak to other players instead. It's been great, and I've had the joy of strangers helping me out when I'm in a tough spot, and it's nice to do the same back and help someone survive in an unfavourable situation. Another reason for Arc Raiders' success is simply the quality across many aspects of the game. This of course doesn't solely make a game popular or retain players, but it certainly helps. The exceptional audio design is often highlighted as a strong point for the game, and the same goes for the graphics, the intelligence and variety of PvE enemies, the general feel of the game and more. In terms of obvious flaws for the game, there isn't actually very many. Now with that being said, I think Embark can make a lot of useful quality of life changes, but there isn't actually any significant glaring problems. Unless of course you just don't enjoy the style of game this is, which is fine at the end of the day. Now I'm not one of the people in the camp of all modern games suck, things were so much better in the past, but I do think a lot of games at release aren't up to a very high standard. Generally speaking, it's not the developer's fault, but rather, the shareholders and the higher ups wanting to release an unfinished game. But I really appreciate that it isn't the case here, as Arc Raiders came out of the box already being high quality. Then again, this year has been pretty great for games releasing in a desirable state, with Expedition 33, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Dispatch and Silksong being just a few of the examples. Now, the long-term future for Arc Raiders is kinda up in the air. It certainly looks good, but only time will tell how it goes as more players venture into the late game progression and sink more time into it. Still, I'd love to know your thoughts on either game and which one you prefer. Some feedback about why you think the finals didn't stick while Arc Raiders did would be great to hear. I personally love both the games, they're both amazing, and really good and really high quality. But of course people have their preferences, and I'm sure, although it is a smaller crowd, there are some people out there who prefer the finals, so I'd love to know. Anyway, that's all, so thank you for watching to the end.